Viewer discretion is advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is a dramatized testimony based on Cassie Ventura's statements from Day 5 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial, as reported by Inner City Press. What you're about to hear isn't a rumor. It's not a blog post. It's not internet speculation. It's sworn testimony. If you seek truth and accountability, please consider subscribing after this vital story. This is a journey into the shadows, and it begins with a door. The courtroom silence was a living, breathing thing. It pressed down, heavy and expectant, on every soul present. Eyes, weary yet unblinking, focused on the witness stand. The air itself seemed to crackle with anticipation, a low hum of unspoken questions hanging in the heavy quiet. For days, the world had watched, fascinated and horrified, as fragments of a hidden empire began to surface. But what was about to unfold transcended mere headlines. This wasn't rumor. This wasn't blog post speculation. This was something far more chilling. This was sworn testimony. And it began not with a grand revelation, but with a descent. A plunge into the very earth beneath a sprawling, glittering mansion. A plunge into absolute darkness. I remember the first time, vividly. The cold shock of concrete beneath my bare feet. A stark contrast to the plush carpets, the gleaming marble, the gilded opulence of the world above. We were deep beneath the mansion, beneath the sprawling lawns and shimmering pools, in a place carefully concealed, utterly separate. It was a secret that felt heavier than the earth above us. A secret that breathed cold, damp air, laced with the metallic tang of something unidentifiable. The halls were narrow, unyielding, concrete pathways that snaked through the subterranean darkness. No natural light, of course. Only a pervasive, unsettling red glow, pulsing from unseen fixtures, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with every step. It wasn't just a basement. It was a labyrinth, designed not for storage, but for concealment, for a world where sound would never escape, where screams would be swallowed by thick, impenetrable walls. Soundproof. That detail, above all others, has haunted my nightmares. And then, the rooms. Not living spaces, but stages. Each one contained a grotesque tableau, a perverse collection of furniture unlike anything I had ever seen. Dark leather, cold metal, and bizarre implements, masks, ropes, latex, objects that spoke of a depraved imagination, of intentions far removed from anything remotely human or consensual. My breath caught in my throat the first time I saw them. These were not props for a game. They were tools. I wasn't alone. Never alone. Other women were there. Always. Figures, often silent, their faces obscured by masks, sometimes elaborate, sometimes simple, clinical white. They moved with a disturbing docility, like performers awaiting their cue. They were referred to as performers, a chilling euphemism. It stripped them of their identity, their humanity, reducing them to mere instruments in a macabre play. I saw the fear in their eyes, even behind the masks. Or perhaps it was simply resignation. Diddy, of course, was always present, always watching. His eyes, in that pulsating red light, seemed to pierce through the masks, through any pretense of anonymity. He moved with a chilling sense of ownership, an unshakable authority that permeated every cold concrete space. And then, he said it. The words that burrowed deep into my soul and refused to leave. He looked at me, a possessive smirk playing on his lips, his voice low, guttural, dripping with a chilling power. This is where I bring the ones I own. The weight of those words, the implied threat, and the absolute claim to my being was suffocating. I wasn't just a guest. I was property. And that was just the beginning. The tunnels were also the stage for the freak-offs, regularly scheduled. Not parties, not gatherings, events. They were rituals of degradation, fueled by an endless supply of drugs that blurred the edges of reality, turning the grotesque into a hazy, nightmarish blur. Some of them happened in the tunnels, where the soundproof walls ensured no cry for help would ever reach the surface. I remember the rhythm of it all, the forced laughter, the chilling lack of genuine joy, the roles. Yes, roles. We were given instructions, expected to embody characters, to participate in scenarios that defied every boundary of decency. Sometimes it was filmed, the insidious whir of unseen cameras, a constant, silent threat, capturing every humiliating detail, every moment of forced compliance. There was no safe word, no signal to stop, no way out once the game began. Diddy would often text, his words dripping with a cold, calculated anticipation. Game starts at 10 p.m. No breaking character until 8 a.m. 8 a.m. The terrifying thought of enduring hours, an entire night, trapped in a performance I didn't consent to, unable to remember, unable to escape. The drugs ensured that. Pills, often dissolved in drinks I was unknowingly given. The world would swim, colors would bleed, and the sharp edges of horror would soften into a disorienting haze. I would wake up later, sometimes in my own bed, sometimes in a strange room, a gaping hole where my memory should have been. A terrifying void. What happened? What did I do? What was done to me? The questions would scream in my head, but there were no answers. Only fragmented images, flashes of red light, the metallic taste in my mouth, and an overwhelming sense of violation. The drugs were the key. They were the weapon that erased the memory, that silenced the screams, that allowed the unspeakable to become the unremembered. The control was absolute. It wasn't just the drugs or the fear. It was a sophisticated, insidious web of manipulation that permeated every aspect of my life. Diddy allegedly used pills, threats, and an omnipresent surveillance to control me, to keep me compliant, to ensure I remained within his orbit. The pills. They became a constant. Sometimes subtly slipped into my drink, sometimes handed to me directly as a boost or a relaxant. Their effects were disorienting, leaving me vulnerable, my mind a foggy landscape where true memories struggled to form. I was constantly tired, constantly confused, unable to trust my own thoughts, my own perceptions. This was a deliberate tactic, a way to ensure I was never fully present, never fully aware of the horrors unfolding around me. The threats were equally chilling, not always shouted, often whispered. Threats to ruin my career, to expose fabricated scandals, to harm my loved ones. His words were precise, cutting, delivered with an icy calm that spoke of absolute power. If you ever leave, Cassie, I will make sure you have nothing. No career, no friends, no life. He had the power to do it. He had the connections. I believed him. And that belief was its own prison. Then came the surveillance. It was a terrifying discovery, a violation of my most intimate spaces. I found videos of myself on his laptop, videos I didn't remember filming, videos of me in vulnerable states, in compromising situations. My blood ran cold. The realization that I was constantly being watched, constantly being recorded, even in my most private moments, was utterly terrifying. This wasn't just about control. It was about ownership. He saw my horror, my disbelief, and he simply smiled, a chilling, self-satisfied smirk. Then he said it, his voice a low, possessive growl. I keep everything for leverage. Leverage. That single word summed up his entire philosophy. Every moment of vulnerability, every recorded indiscretion, every forced compliance, it was all stored, catalogued, ready to be deployed as a weapon. It meant there was no escape. No matter how far I ran, he had pieces of me, fragments of my life, held hostage. He owned my past, and he intended to own my future. The realization was a tightening noose around my neck. The control was complete. The control escalated to outright abuse, a cycle of violence fueled by paranoia and a terrifying sense of ownership. It wasn't just psychological manipulation, it was physical terror that left its marks on my body and my soul. I remember the boat, a luxury yacht, shimmering on the open water under a deceptively serene sky. We were far from shore, far from any help. An argument ignited, a spark of defiance from me, quickly met with Diddy's explosive rage. He grabbed me, his grip like iron, and without a moment's hesitation, hurled me off the side of the boat. The cold shock of the ocean water, the sudden disorientation, the struggle to breathe, to surface. I remember the laughter from above, his laughter, as I fought for air, a terrifying game of life and death. The sheer casualness of it, the utter disregard for my safety, was chilling. Other times, the attacks were more contained, but no less brutal. Blows, kicks, fueled by his jealousy, by his possessive rage. There was one particular attack, triggered by his jealousy over Kid Cudi. A simple conversation, a perceived threat to his ownership, and his rage erupted. I was hit, kicked, left bruised and trembling, the physical pain a stark reminder of his absolute power. He made it clear. Any perceived disloyalty, any independent thought, any connection outside of his orbit would be met with swift and brutal punishment. His control extended far beyond physical violence. He tried to ruin my life if I dared to even consider leaving. Threats to my career, to my reputation, to my ability to ever work in the industry again. He would orchestrate smear campaigns, leaking fabricated stories to gossip blogs, ensuring that any attempt I made to break free was met with public humiliation and professional ruin. He wanted me broken, dependent, stripped of all agency. He wanted me to believe that outside his control, I had nothing, that my world would crumble without him. And for a long time, I believed it. The invisible chains of fear were often stronger than any physical restraint. The Intercontinental Hotel incident remains a horrifying, fragmented memory. It was the night before my movie premiere, a milestone in my career, a moment that should have been triumphant. Instead, it became another nightmare orchestrated by him. I was drugged. I remember the champagne, the celebratory mood, the sudden onset of a dizzying, disorienting fog. The world began to spin, voices became distant echoes, and then nothing. A black void. The profound terror of losing time, of losing control of my own body and mind, was unlike anything I had experienced before. I had been filmed in a state of utter vulnerability, my privacy brutally invaded. I woke up alone, confused. My body ached, a dull, pervasive throb. My head throbbed. Bruises. They bloomed across my skin, purple and angry, silent testament to what had transpired in the void of my memory. I had no idea what happened. No recollection of the hours that had passed, of the events that had led to these painful marks. The shame, the confusion, the profound sense of violation was overwhelming. And then, the text. It arrived hours later, a chilling confirmation of his monstrous control. From Diddy. "You were amazing. I'm proud." Those words, so deceptively benign, were a dagger to my soul. They confirmed he was there, he witnessed, he orchestrated, and he approved. He celebrated my humiliation, my pain, my non-consensual participation. It was a sick, twisted game, and I was merely a pawn. The message was a reminder that he saw everything, owned everything, even my very self, in moments I couldn't remember. It was a final, horrifying assertion of his complete dominion over my body, my memory, and my spirit. That text message burned into my consciousness, a permanent scar. The aftermath of years of such profound trauma was a long, arduous journey into the depths of my own mind. For so long, I repressed it, buried the memories deep, locked them away in a desperate attempt to survive, to function, to simply exist. The sheer weight of the abuse, the manipulation, the constant violation, was too heavy to bear. I tried to pretend it never happened, to build a new life on shaky ground, ignoring the tremors beneath the surface. But trauma, like poison, slowly contaminates everything. It seeped into my relationships, my work, my very sense of self. The nightmares, the panic attacks, the sudden, inexplicable moments of dread. They became constant companions. I realized I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't outbury it. The only way forward was through. I entered therapy. A long, painful, but ultimately liberating process of slowly, painstakingly uncovering the layers of buried memories, confronting the monsters that haunted my subconscious. It was like sifting through wreckage, piece by agonizing piece, trying to reconstruct a fragmented past. The process was excruciating, forcing me to relive moments I had desperately tried to forget, to acknowledge the depths of the depravity I had endured. But with each memory unearthed, each tear shed, came a flicker of light, a spark of healing. Then came the decision to file a civil lawsuit. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about money. It was about accountability. It was about breaking the silence. It was about reclaiming my voice, my body, my life. It was a terrifying step. Knowing the immense power of the man I was going up against, knowing the retaliation I might face. But the alternative, remaining silent, remaining trapped, was no longer an option. I had to fight, not just for myself, but for every other person who might have suffered in silence, who might have been consumed by those very same shadows. My case, my desperate cry for justice, sent shockwaves through the empire. It triggered FBI raids on Diddy's properties. The world, for the first time, began to see the true scale of the alleged hidden darkness. The news was everywhere. The private world I had been forced into for so long was suddenly public, exposed, dissected. The initial chaos was overwhelming, the media frenzy relentless. But I refused interviews. Every single one. I didn't want to be a symbol. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want my pain to become entertainment. My only desire was singular, unwavering, and profound. I just wanted freedom. Freedom from the fear, from the control, from the haunting memories. Freedom to simply exist, unburdened by the past. Freedom for every person who had disappeared into those tunnels and never spoke again. Don't want to be a symbol. I just want accountability. For every person who disappeared into those tunnels and never spoke again. This testimony, though dramatized, echoes the call for accountability that reverberates through the entertainment world. If you believe in uncovering hidden truths, if you stand for those silenced by power, then this is your community. Subscribe to our channel now and click the bell icon so you never miss a vital investigation like this one. Your support empowers us to continue shining a light into the darkest corners.